vintage historical photos of the popular band The Beatles in the 1960s. The Beatles were an English rock band formed in Liverpool in 1960, often regarded as the most commercially successful and critically acclaimed act in popular music. Since 1962, the group consisted of John Lennon lead guitar, vocals, Paul McCartney bass guitar, vocals, George Harrison lead guitar, vocals, Ringo Starr drums, vocals. Starting from skiffle and 1950s rock and roll, the group later played music in a variety of genres ranging from folk rock to psychedelic rock, incorporating elements of classical music and other elements in innovative ways. The Beatles are seen as the embodiment of progressive ideas, influencing the socio-cultural revolution of the 1960s. Initially 5 people consisting of Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, Stuart Sutcliffe bass and Pete Best drums, the Beatles were only famous in Liverpool and Hamburg clubs for 3 years starting in 1960, including the Cavern Club, which was the first place where the band performed, and they had performed at this club around 292 times. Then Sutcliffe left in 1961, and Best was replaced by Starr the following year. The Beatles were forged into professionals by a music store entrepreneur named Brian Epstein after he became their manager, and the potential of the music was polished by producer George Martin. In late 1962, the Beatles had achieved success in the United Kingdom with their first single Love Me Do. When their popularity grew into an intense fan frenzy to be dubbed Beatlemania, the band was nicknamed the Fab Four, with Epstein, Martin and other members of the band sometimes given the informal title Fifth Beatle. By early 1964, the Beatles had become international stars and had achieved unprecedented levels of critical and commercial success. They became major leaders in the British cultural revival, ushering in the British invasion of the American pop market, and soon made their film debut with A Hard Day's Night 1964. From 1965 onwards, they produced more sophisticated recordings, including the albums Rubber Soul 1965, Revolver Album 1966. Throughout the following year, they toured internationally until 1966 and concentrated on recording albums at home. Heralding the album era, their success elevated the album to the dominant form of record consumption over the single. They also inspired greater public interest in psychedelic drugs and Eastern spirituality, and advances in electronic music, album art, and music videos. Freed from the burden of touring, the desire to experiment was fulfilled by working on the album SGT, Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, beginning in December 1966. The Beatles insisted that everything on SGT, Pepper had to be different. We had microphones right under the brass and headphones made into microphones downloaded onto the violins. We used big old oscillators to vary the speed of the instruments and vocals, and we cut up the tape into pieces, all the while going back and forth on the wrong track. A rich, continuous, and richly collaborative work of geniuses with bold ambition and astonishing originality that expanded the possibilities and raised the expectations of what the experience of listening to popular music could be on the record. On this basis, SGT, Pepper became the catalyst for an explosion of mass enthusiasm for the rock album format that would change the aesthetics and economics of the record business, far surpassing the early pop explosions of the Elvis phenomenon of 1956 and Beatlemania of 1963. SGT, Pepper was the first pop album to feature full lyrics on the back cover. The lyrics have also been the subject of much fan analysis and speculation, and the cover art of SGT, Pepper's album, has also attracted serious interest and analysis. After the release of SGT, Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band 1967, and enjoyed further commercial success with the Beatles releasing several albums also known as the White Album, 1968. In 1968, they founded Apple Corps, a multimedia company that continued to oversee projects related to the band's legacy. The Beatles then released the album Abbey Road 1969. The Beatles officially disbanded on the 10th of April 1970, with Lennon, McCartney, Harrison and Starr each releasing solo albums in 1970. And there were several subsequent collaborations between one or more former members. Ringo Starr's album Ringo 1973 is the only album to feature compositions and performances by all the former members, but on separate songs. Collaborating with Starr, Harrison organized the concert for Bangladesh in New York City in August 1971 with Indian musician Ravi Shankar. Apart from an unreleased jam session in 1970 for later bootleg as a Tit and a Snore in 1974, Lennon and McCartney never recorded together again. The Beatles at the time in the studio to create their own songs by utilizing technology innovatively and treating the studio as an instrument. They asked Martin and the recording engineer to experiment or try new things that might produce good sounds. At the same time, they also used certain events creatively, such as unintentional guitar feedback, the resonance of a glass bottle, or the sound of a cassette tape being played backwards. Things like this are supported by the cool hands of Martin and EMI technicians such as Norman Smith, Ken Townsend and Jeff Emerick, who all contributed greatly from the Rubber Soul album, especially Revolver and so on. With a lot of resourcefulness in the studio, sound effects methods were obtained, unusual microphone placement, tape recording, double tracking, and vari speed. They also combined string instruments, brass, and Indian musical instruments, such as the sitar can be heard in the song Norwegian Would This Bird Has Flown and Swarmandole in the song Strawberry Fields Forever. They also used electronic musical instruments such as the mellotron in the intro to Strawberry Fields Forever and clavioline in the song Baby, You're a Rich Man.